because this was flowing around, and I've seen a few people on lefty media talk about this. Tulsi, and I know Karim has a lot of thoughts about Tulsi, and I am blown away by the headline I seen. And I say headline because I do want to preface this by the fact that I did not see the video yet. We are going to watch the video together. It'll be our last segment tonight because apparently Tulsi went on Tucker Carlson and now flanked him to his right and was defending drone strikes. So once again, I ain't seen the article. I've seen people talk about it. So I didn't see the video. So we are gonna react to the video because I think this is the first time that you guys are seeing it. Let me. I just had it. Let me find the link. Here it is. So let's watch this, and I want to get your guys' takes, and then we wrap up after that because this is actually unbelievable. My opinion of Tulsi at this point is pretty low, but even this was pretty shocking to me. So let's watch the video. Let's react.
It's gonna be painful to see, man. I haven't seen it yet, so
yeah, I actually haven't seen the video. That's why I want to watch it so I can be fair. I'm gonna put my headphones on so it doesn't echo. 1 second. I still haven't had a chance to like actually watch the video, but check this out. This is about 2 minutes. Let's see what Tulsi has to say.
Congressman, thanks so much for coming on. So you get to lie. I mean, this will not shock you because you've seen it so much, but you get to lie about the loss of human life. You get caught and nothing happens to you. What kind of system is that?
So what I'm thinking about, I think the premise of this conversation is when the Biden administration was lying when they did that drone strike and they said they killed the ISIS-K militants. And the report on the ground at the time that they was lying, but the Biden administration was doubling down and kept saying, oh, we got ISIS-K. And then they just recently, I think at the day of this interview was taking place, it was the evidence was so overwhelming, they had to come out and publicly admit that they killed innocent civilians with a drone strike. I covered it on my show on Social Cinema, the press conference that they gave. It was actually very hilarious because the military general, their response to killing innocent civilians in Afghanistan was pretty much, oops, I'm sorry, my bad. Anyway, that's what they talk about here. Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't part of the reason why this came out in the first place was because the guy that they killed and his family was an aid worker that was employed by some organization in the U.S., right? So they wouldn't have found out if it weren't for that connection, right? That's insane.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So, and that's what I was talking about before. It wasn't like the Biden administration, like, oh, I have this epiphany. I'm so sorry that we killed it. No, they had to. they came out with a press conference and they admitted it. So I just want to give that backstory of why Tucker is asking this. So I'm gonna start the video over, just so you guys have that context.
Congressman, thanks so much for coming on. So you get to lie. I mean, this will not shock you because you've seen it so much, but you get to lie about the loss of human life. You get caught and nothing happens to you. What kind of system is that?
I mean, this kind of accountability is critical. I want to point out first that anytime there are civilian casualties in war, it is tragic and terrible. Yeah. War is a terrible thing. And I think it's important for the American people to understand that Islamist jihadists are continuing to wage war against us.
The fuck?
And the Islamist ideology, not the same as the religion of Islam, but this
is just
ideology.
I'm gonna try to play the video to the end, but that's atrocious. I cannot wait to get Kareem's and your guys' thoughts on this. But that's like I said, this is my first time actually watching the whole video, and we are less than halfway through this. I told you guys I only read what she said, but it's already worth hearing it. Already.
The reason I'm laughing is because you guys are doing like, there was this old show on MTV that the guy was watching the clips and like, what's happening here? Like, it did this.
This worse than I thought because she immediately went into her Islamophobic bullshit. But anyway, I'm gonna rewind it just shortly and then let's continue.
To us. And the Islamist ideology, not the same as the religion of Islam, but this Islamist ideology, which is a political ideology that inspired the terrorist attacks on our country on 9/11, is the greatest threat that we're facing right now in this country and the world. It is the foundation of governance of so-called Islamic countries like Turkey and Iran. And
I'm sorry, the biggest threat that we're facing right now is random people in the Middle East. I am not my people.
Is he also saying Islamic countries like Turkey and Iran? Is he literally saying that? These are the biggest threat to.
So these are
Oh my
the next countries that the U.S. right? I think this is the whenever they say, oh, this and this country are a threat, it's because they want to go there and get it. Like,
So this is
just like when
that's on
Obama
point.
said that about Juma, like,
Whoops.
That's on point. That's on point, Josanna, because I mean, I'm just like I didn't want to stop the video. I apologize for doing that because I wanted to play it through. But what she just said, I'll tell you, I didn't see the video. She was like, "This is a threat to American life." No, it's not, bro. I am infinitely more times more likely to be killed by the fucking state that we live in, the cops, than I am by these random Islamists that only have a grudge against America because America destroyed their homeland. They killed and tortured their people. But sorry, go ahead, Karim, and then I'll finish the video.
And not to mention, like, they're showing video of a U.S. military drone strike on an aid worker and his family, and then she pivots like immediately without even discussing that into her her Islamophobic rant. But then another thing she did is she's like this. She's talking about like a Sunni Salafi jihadi ideology, and then she says states like Turkey and Iran, and it's just like, you don't know what you're talking about, lady. Like, what?
Anyway, let's try and finish.
Iran is not Sunni Salafi, like. Anyway,
There's
all right. Let me finish the video. I broke my own rule. I apologize because I was gonna let the video play, but this is so bad. Like I told you, I didn't see the video, but this is way worse than what I heard about this video. So I'm gonna rewind it just a little bit again, and we try to finish it, and I pass to the panel.
Okay, let's.
But holy shit! If you're a Tulsi fan, you are as delusional as the AOC fans. Like if you still on her, or if you still defend Tulsi Gabbard at this point, you are no better than the AOC fans who still believe that she fights for them. Like this is beyond absurd. But anyway, sorry. Let me finish. Let's try to finish, and then I give you guys full thoughts. I broke my own rule. I apologize, but I'll rewind it a little bit.
Ideology, which is a political ideology that inspired the terrorist attacks on our country on 9/11, is the greatest threat that we're facing right now in this country and the world. It is the foundation of governance of so-called Islamic countries like Turkey and Iran and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And it's what's behind the discriminatory policies that they have in these countries against Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, atheists, and others. So as long as these Islamist jihadists are waging war against us, we have to work to defeat them militarily and ideologically. And militarily, we have two choices in how we do that. Number one, we can continue to invade and occupy and nation build in countries around the world, just as we did in Afghanistan at great cost. Number two, we can take a targeted approach using airstrikes, using our special forces to go in and go after these terrorist cells. The reality is that the cost to the American people, the cost to our troops, the cost to civilians will be far less if we take this very targeted approach to go after these jihadist terrorist cells than if we continue making the very same mistakes that we saw in Afghanistan and other parts of the world of invasion, occupation, and nation building.
Jesus.
Can I be in a room with her? Can I be in a room with her? Sorry.
That is unbelievable. That clip is, by the way, way worse than I thought it was gonna be. I told you guys, I only read what she said, but she is calling for the expansion of the war on terror. Do not get twisted. That is what she called for. She is calling for us to continue to fight this war on terror. How can anyone claim she is anti-war? And
if the U.S. just goes with a drone and airplane, it's not war. It's saving people. Buddhists. Atheists,
a comment just said, also I clicked the wrong one, but Judith said, look at Tuck's face. I think Tuck always does that face, but I think there was a second where she's like, what the fuck did she just say? You can tell that even he was thrown out. But go ahead, Kareem, and then we get Peter in here as well. Jesus,
it's very difficult to unpack this because there's so much to say about this. First of all, when I hear her talk, it's like being thrown back 20 years, approximately 20 years, when George Bush started his war on terror, like as if she is just stuck in time. And you almost see that she is doing something. She is deliberately, continuously using language, kind of language that we have that psychological part again. She's continuously repeating that Islamist terrorists, these Islamist terrorists. You see, don't forget, popular politicians like this have a complete team behind them, a complete rhetorical team. She knows what she is doing. Islamist terrorists, they hate our lives. They're the biggest threat to our existence and that kind of stuff. I remember the last time you also showed us a video, Nick, where she said that these Islamists try to force us to change our way of life into their beliefs, so to convert us. And I was like, any person who believes this nonsense, that these people in their own country are blowing themselves up because they want to convert us to say, hey, great religion, we want you to be like us, so we'll blow ourselves up in our own country against our occupiers. It just doesn't make sense at all. What she is doing here is a deliberate attempt to shape our mind into thinking that the biggest threat are the victims of the United States empire. Okay, they are not our biggest threat. They don't try to convert us. The only thing that is happening is that they are fighting against an imperial power that is occupying their countries and in fact wiping out most of the Middle East. The majority of the countries in the Middle East right now are literally being destroyed. And I find it just so nefarious what is happening here, like saying that they are the biggest threat to our lives while we have an imperial army destroying the whole world, invading, neocolonialism, using sanctions. And of course, don't forget this, the number one contributor to climate change is the US Army. You know what I mean? And I don't know. There's so much to say here. I'm going to leave it at that because my mind is too full with
let's get Peter in here. Let's
Josanna jump in just before and pass to Peter. Because I've been seeing people in the comments saying like, "Oh, Tulsi lost it completely. She donated her heart to Dick Cheney."
I saw that one.
Say that, Dick Cheney. I just want to make sure that no, she didn't. She didn't lose it. She didn't donate her heart. She thinks like that since forever.
Yeah, she was like that. Right.
What she is right now is
Definitely.
great actress. Give this woman the freaking Oscars. Because she's been pretending to y'all that she's like this great progressive politician that's going to change things and on the left. And then she gets there and that's who she is. This is just mask off situation right here.
Yeah, and Josanna, you say something very good there. The people who saw through Tulsi, except a few very sharp eyes like Peter Beattie, who also saw through it, it's mostly the marginalized communities like Muslims and black people who actually saw through her BS from the beginning. Why? Because we know the pain that's being inflicted on us when public officials say that shit. You know what I mean? So we already knew in the beginning that she is doing stuff that harms large groups of people, that is nefarious. But you had groups of people on the left, mostly white left, but particularly also on the right, saying, no, she's only talking about the extremists. She's only talking about the extremist Islam. Yeah, that is pro-imperialist nonsense, of course, because the extreme Islam is no problem for you if you don't bomb, dominate, and exploit these countries. These are groups that are fighting against you. Of course.
You get a Western colonized by Christianity that's come straight from Europe. Woohoo! Christianity washed continent, and you tell them Islam's bad because you know that they're not going to even be curious enough to read the Quran, for example, or to get curious and ask people. No, they're just gonna and create the enemy. And if there's something that takes me out of my zone of balance, is the freaking enemy figure that this country is able to create to blind people out, right? Sorry, Peter, please jump in. And sorry, Karina, I just get.
Yeah, I mean, this like Nick
No.
said at the very beginning, this is her outflanking Carlson from the right. Like I just watching this, I'm like, Jesus, Comrade Carlson here is bringing up a good point. And then, but the craziest thing here is that the point he's making, he's cynical and he's just using it to attack the Democrats. But the point, nonetheless, is absolutely valid. You can't just murder innocent people and then, you know, there should be consequences for that. But of course, there will be none. But then, so that's the framing, that's the question. And then Tulsi jumps in to basically say, actually, drone strikes are good. Literally, that's exactly what happened. Carlson says, look at this drone strike that killed a bunch of innocent people, and then there's no consequences for it in the U.S. military or the U.S. political structure of any sort. And then Tulsi uses that as an opportunity to say, actually, drone warfare is good because it's not like the bad wars that I don't like, the forever wars where we actually send in troops. What we should be doing is just bombing people from drone right at the same time as they're showing footage of an innocent family that was massacred by exactly the kind of warfare that she's advocating. It's really just jaw-dropping.
Yeah, and what you see here is that. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
I'll pass it right. I'll pass it right back to you, Kareem. But what she's saying is so ridiculous and so dumb. So because I am anti-war, I am anti-imperialist through and through. But you guys realize that at least when you have ground troops, there's more accountability. When you have drone strikes, that's less accountability, and that leads to more civilian deaths. So Tulsi, under the guise of protecting the troops, she's 100% okay with civilian deaths. Well, that's why that video is so shocking. That's why I love the point that Peter brought up, because Tucker, even though he's being a partisan hack, and he always is a partisan hack, and that's why I don't give Tucker any credit, he was at least making the good point. I love that you brought that up. He was like, damn, shouldn't people pay for this? Now, I would, like, if I was that interview, and this shows how damning Tulsi is, because she took what Tucker was saying and shifted the conversation to the right. If I was that interview, this is why you would never see me on Tucker Carlson, I'm like, bro, you know your boy Trump did that, right? You realize that Trump actually reduced the amount of due process they needed to launch drones. I didn't say that the best way, but he loosened the restrictions they need to launch drone strikes. So they didn't have to report on as many civilian deaths that they did. They made it easier for them to approve drone strikes. So that's your boy. And that's what I would brought up. Like, bro, so you must hate Trump too, right? But instead of doing that, she actually agrees with him to the right. And that's unbelievable. And I want to make this one last point. I'll pass it right back to you, Kareem. And I kind of made this point on the Vanguard, and there was a ton of Tulsi fans that was mad at the Vanguard and they was mad at me for saying this. But you had what Tulsi is saying regarding the Islamists is not even true at face value, because she said, "Oh, they are just a giant threat to our country and way of life." I said earlier, that's the police. That's capitalism. Capitalism is stealing our wealth. That's directly responsible for the decrease in quality of life that we live. We have the military that is actively poisoning. I covered this on my show. You didn't see no one else cover this, but I covered how the U.S. military is actively poisoning the black community with impunity. They dump in toxic waste. That leads to our people being poisoned. There's a story I'm gonna cover here very soon, how there's another Flint water crisis going on right now that's worse, right? So it's capitalism, it's the climate crisis that the military industrial complex is responsible for that is a threat to our community. And that's on top of the police, of all the shit that we had to do with our country. But she is directing the blame to Islam. Why is she doing that? Because Tulsi is very, very politically calculating. And I met Tulsi Gabbard. And so what Josanna said is on point. Because Tulsi is an amazing actor. And if you talk to any politician, there's a reason why they're in the position they are in. Because they are great at winning the room over. They're very charismatic. And when I had that talk with Tulsi, bro, it seemed like she was legit. I'm going to be real with you guys. I talked to her. I brought up my points why anti-war is important. I brought up like healthcare. And then I had a great conversation with her. Amazing conversation with her. But clearly she was acting. If you look at the political steps she has made. Because once again, she's very politically calculating. Because she knows, this is the calculation. I'll pass right back to you, Kareem. She knows that she burnt the bridges of the neoliberal establishment when she endorsed Bernie over Hillary Clinton. But then she did a lot of horrific stuff. Her record was exposed by many progressives. And a lot of the progressive left turned against her as well. So she lost the favor of the progressive left of the neoliberals. So she has one option: shift to the independent right and MAGA supporters that she saw that they liked her because she took down Hillary Clinton. That's it. So then she's like, all right, I'm going to grow this as my new fan base, get into right-wing media. I'm going to give up all my power, even though I'm in fucking Congress in the middle of a pandemic. You know how much, if she actually cared, you know how much good work she could have done, but she threw that away because she didn't want to get primary because she don't actually give a fuck. She don't actually give a fuck. Now, I wanted to talk about the Islamist thing and show you guys why she is so deeply unserious with this, because I seen Tulsi fans like, oh well, she talked, and Karim was talking about this as well. Oh, Tulsi, she's talking about radical Islam. I don't even have to debate that point, but you guys understand that it was George W. Bush Jr. It was George W. Bush. He said he invaded Iraq in the Middle East because he got a message from God. You realize that, right? You realize that
he called it a crusade even. He called it a crusade.
Exactly. So you had George Bush that invaded the Middle East because of his Christian God. You have a ton of Christians, and Noam Chomsky did a great job explaining this. Noam Chomsky explained that a lot of reasons you got a lot of these Zionists on both sides of the party because they believe you should have a pure and clean Israel because that's what they believe Jesus is going to come back. So we have all this mass death, and that's a genocide being done in Palestine, by the way, under the Christian blessing, Judaism blessing. Well, I would say that because you got a lot of anti-Zionist Jews, but there's the evangelical Christians who they really want to purge Palestinians of Israel because they want that place to be purged when Christians come out. Once again, Noam Chomsky does a great job talking about that, right? So it's a Christian ideology that is responsible for a lot of mass death, as long as other religions, because I'm not here to defend any religion. So what's my point? My point is it had nothing to do with religion. Because you have Christian people doing horrible stuff, you have Islam people doing horrible stuff, you have some Buddhist people doing horrible stuff. But so to isolate it about religion instead of the actual problem of ending U.S. imperialism is deeply irresponsible. And she is doing this because she is playing the cultural war that will win over the right-wing base that she's trying to gain. Because these are right-wing Christians who love nothing more than to demonize Muslims. So that's why Tulsi did what she did. But sorry, I went on a little rant. Karim, you had anything you wanted to add?
Can I be the middleman?
Josanna, go after Karim. After Karim, and then you can jump in, Josanna.
Okay.
So I think what she does here is playing into that almost ingrained sense of Orientalism that we have in our Western European cultures. And that's why I find it so nefarious. I mean, ask yourself a genuine question. When she says the Islam is the biggest, or these Islamists are the biggest threat in the world. I mean, which decently thinking human being can even take a statement like that serious? I mean, really, I don't feel threatened when I walk around in my country, whether it's in Hong Kong, whether it's in Malaysia, what's a majority Muslim country, whether it's in the Netherlands. I don't feel threatened by Islamists. Actually, I feel very threatened by the total havoc that's being wreaked by the United States around the world. It really scares me. It seriously scares me. Plus all the demonization of groups against each other through our media systems. So what she is doing is something that is deeply ingrained in European culture. That is this idea of the European man, the white man in general, against the rest of the world. Like it's a culture that is very much rooted in fear of other groups of people, which already started, you could say, well, maybe already early crusades, the time that it's very interesting. You see it in our movies, you see it in our popular cultures. It's a kind of fear of everything that is not European. And that fear is so deep in our culture that it every time works to promote empire. It is against the scary Muslims. It's against the scary Chinese. It's against the scary blacks. It's against the scary Indians. It's like, it's so deep in European culture, this idea of the universal man against this very threatening, almost monstrosities in the rest of the world. Seriously, do history, check history texts, go do your own research. You will see that fearful thinking of everyone that didn't think and looked European is a deeply ingrained aspect of our culture that's being used every time in movies to keep us divided, keep us hating each other, scared of each other. And what Tulsi is doing here is playing on that fear, that Orientalism, these scary, scary Muslims, the ones that you would see in these 80 Hollywood movies, you know, the ones that would be shot by what's this guy's name? These muscled guy, our Italian. Rambo would shoot these bad Muslims, these scary guys, you know, with these beards and these ooh. And
no, actually, Rambo in Rambo 3, he was helping the Mujahideen because that was.
Oh, he was helping. Okay, then other B movies.
That's when the scary Muslims weren't so scary. Actually, the scary Muslims.
Right.
I didn't see that movie. So he was what? That's crazy. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, you got to see it.
But it's crazy.
They used to have the original cut. They at the end they said this is dedicated to the brave warriors.
But let me finish my point for a moment before I lose it. But and there's another point I wanted to make. And Nick says a good point. Nick says, like, okay, she does it for the culture wars and this and that. I think there's even more nefariousness behind this really, really obvious attempt for her to use that language, you know, these Islamist terrorists. The way she says it, it's almost comical, you know. And I think Peter can tell us more about that. Is we need to ask the question, why is she so focused on Muslims? By the way, it's also weird she says Turkey, you know, because Turkey is a bit, well, you could say is a bit on the side of the United States sometimes, you know, and a bit against Iran. So it's very weird she lumps them together. So that's, again, the generalization. But we must ask ourselves the question, why is she so hyper-focused on Islam? And we can say, no, it's only the extremist Islam. Yeah, we know that nonsense. George Bush said that. Dick Cheney said that. They all said that. But the result is that we now live in a Muslim-hating Western world, so it doesn't work that way, you know, when you speak in these kind of languages. But I think we need to ask ourselves, why is she so focused on that? What are the deeper reasons behind it? And I think Peter can say that, Sana. Where does the money come from, for example? Where does the money come from? There is a deeper reason why she's so anti-Muslim, but I'll leave that to Peter. He knows more about that.
Well, I mean, like the fact that she threw in Pakistan, I was like, oh yeah, right. You know, because anti-Muslim prejudice is a huge thing for the BJP, the Hindutva fascists in India, is to demonize Muslims within India. Pakistan is the huge big enemy. So it makes sense from that perspective. But there's also much the same thought within the U.S. foreign policy blob, the foreign policy elite. Although now they're trying to shift away from the Muslim threat into the big China threat, the big the new yellow peril idea. But remember, like that I'm glad you brought up the Rambo movie, because you know during the Cold War, the enemy was communism. You know, the USSR and China and Cuba, etc. Then it was totally fine to actually help spread the same kind of ideology that she's talking about there, like the Salafi jihadi ideology. That was fostered with the explicit cooperation of the United States government, the Saudi government, because they viewed that archaic, and not even archaic. I mean, it's archaic in a way, but it's actually, Islamic fundamentalism is relatively new. It's only 100 or 200 years old, but they claim that it's like, you know, real Islam from the past, but they don't know what they're talking about. Anyway, so that ideology was spread because they viewed that as a something that could be used against socialism in the Arab and Muslim world. So back then, you know, it's great. Like the Saudi government loved it because you have all these young men that might threaten their government and their control. So yeah, great. Let's export them and send them all over the world, and they can, you know, cause trouble. Then as soon as they're no longer useful, you know, they're just forgotten. And then the U.S. government and the foreign policy elite is searching desperately for a new enemy. Like Noriega, is it drug traffickers? What can we use to justify our military budget, to justify our empire? And then finally they got what they wanted. They got a terrorist attack in the U.S. And now, okay, the big enemy is Islam. And Tulsi just hasn't gotten the memo, apparently. Like the rest of the foreign policy blob has moved on. They don't like the war on terror so much anymore. It's hard to justify, like, you know, an F-35, $1.5 trillion boondoggle when you're fighting, you know, weak, small terrorist groups. Instead, now it's primarily China and secondarily Russia. The Democrats still have this weird Russia fixation. But yeah, it's the same old story. It's just who's going to be the new big enemy. And these people, I think, really believe it. It's pathetic, but yeah, that's
Let's
how
get
it is.
Josanna in here. I know she wanted to say something.
Thank you. I just want to, like, we were talking about the psychology of imperialism, and we were talking about trauma and PTSD, right? Yes, I am a person that lives in PTSD and trauma, but the way to heal it is to defeat imperialism and capitalism. Is to end and stop that. Then I'm healed. Then I think I'm beautiful. Deal? Like it's that's the way to heal trauma. And another thing about like talking Tulsi being an actor, like politicians work on that. That's their career. That's what they do for a living. So they want to go up in their career. So they're going to tell all kinds of lies. They're going to make all kinds of alliances just to get where they want to be. It's like, stop believing that they will bring like some kind of change. They won't. We've seen it. We're seeing that just right now. We were like, oh, let's change Trump for Biden and we were going to win. And didn't happen. Another thing is we have a term in Brazil, and if Mateus or there are other Brazilians here watching, we say passar pano is what people were like, well, but she's only going after the radicals and everything. We call that mopping. You're mopping so the person can walk over the clean floor. Stop. They are not doing that for you. They are doing that for their own interests. And I remember, I'm old enough to remember, right very close to 9/11 when happened, the whole thing happened. And it only showed in the news, but like it was 1 a.m. I was watching the news, and then I saw this in Brazil, okay? And I saw in the news, because there was the anthrax thing, the envelopes with the powder that was giving people some kind of like whatever allergy and killing people. And then I saw that W. Bush had a list of countries that dominated the knowledge of anthrax. And by that time, it was Lula's government, and he was standing against the US. So in the list was Iraq, Iran, Brazil was the third. So that's why I'm saying when she says Iran and then Turkey, you can know that the US has interest in there and they want to go there. Because whenever they call you a terrorist, it's because they just want to take over your territory and dominate it.